Welcome to the Chinese Canadian Museum podcast, The School Room. I'm your host, Melissa Lee, CEO of the museum. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, we are incredibly honored to have celebrated filmmaker Anne Hui on the School Room podcast. Anne Hui On-wah, is one of the leading figures who ushered a new age of Hong Kong cinema that began in 1979, known as the Hong Kong New Wave. With a career spanning more than 4 decades and 28 feature films, Anne has cemented her name as one of the greats of Chinese language cinema. Her work often focuses on ordinary people and their daily lives, speaking to themes of human consciousness, politics, migration, and national identity. And it is a great honor to have you here with us in Canada. For me, I can think of so many films that I've seen of your work that has influenced the way I thought of living in Hong Kong, from the Tin Soi Wai series to the very first film I watched, Boat People, to family relationships like Summer Snow, A Simple Life. It's just really a pleasure to have you here in Vancouver with us, and welcome to our podcast.
Thank you for inviting me here.
I want to, in a way, begin at the beginning. Can you think of a film that you saw that made you want to become a director?
I actually didn't start with wanting to become a director, but there's so many films I saw which enriched my life and changed the way I thought. I think the seminal works are Kurosawa's, because I'm always incredibly touched by his films. Ikiru and Seven Samurai. The Seven Samurai seem a kind of costume drama about samurai, but it's about people who go out of their way to help people. And that sort of touched me a lot, and it's sort of very, very relevant when I watched it, although it's not the same age. And the people in the film were in really strange costumes. And then when I was in university, I got in touch with films of the French New Wave. And they showed a way of looking at life and the way of living, which is opposite to ours, especially in the films by Godard. The people were sort of kind of crazy, and they don't care, and they don't mind getting killed. They don't want to get ahead. And at that time, I was in convent school, and I was always taught to be polite, and I still am, and conscientious and positive. But these people were so, they don't care. And I was very attracted to opposites, so to speak. If I can't be them, at least I can appreciate them. I just sort of like their way of looking at life. It seems to be so cool. Everybody thought because they look so good, and even if they drank and had a lot of cigarettes, they didn't suffer from ill health.
Kurosawa famously had an interest in Shakespeare. I know that you have a strong background in literature as well, teaching literature, world literature. We spoke about that at Hong Kong University. Do you also feel that there is that strong background and interest in reading and literature that helps inform your films?
Well, yeah, because it's all about storytelling and life experience. It's the same, but in different media, and film is obviously the more attractive. It's like it's got music and it's got stars, everything, but reading is also very good.
Do you think about some books that you would like to make into film?
Yeah, I thought maybe I could at that time, but I mean, after making it, I find out that the film medium is a very different thing from a book.
How so?
Because telling the story is not the main thing in films. Films is sort of evoking the experience in a different kind of way. Like music is different from literature. Even I, myself, thought that films were the same, also to have storytelling, but using visuals. But it's not the same. It's a different way of evoking experience. Film has its own language. It doesn't say anything, and it's not pure narrative. It should be a lot of suggestions and sense experience. I'm still trying to learn that. It's not just narrative, but literature is also not narrative, but it's language. So it's very different.
In a lot of your films, what I notice is that it deals with real social issues in a variety of different ways. Everything from ghost stories to murders to a simple relationship between a helper and the helper's family, the son. I'm wondering how you choose what you decide to do.
Around the 90s, last century, I suddenly got very interested in documentaries. I was reading a lot about documentaries, about how it's made, and different kinds of very artistic documentaries. I finally got a chance to do program on Huda Jan, the guy who wrote the song "龙的传人," the Son of the Dragon, which is a very, very popular pop song, quite, how to call it, nationalistic and about our heritage and all that. And then he went back to China he's from Taiwan. He went back to China in 1983. And then he got deported after 1989. And so his experience was sort of kind of iconic. So I made a documentary on him on Below the Lion Rock.
Yes.
And it was part documentary, part drama. I mean, I dramatized part of his experience in prison. And I find it extremely satisfactory because I've long nurtured this idea of doing a documentary. I'm still very interested. Time and again, I will have this sudden idea of doing something which is completely different.
I also think that sometimes it is a particular story, but it becomes a wider social lens in your films. So, for example, in Night and Fog, we talked about how it focuses on the murder, the mother and the daughters, but at the same time, it feels so crucial, the village where the mother is from, which is a key part of the film, and then understanding why the woman left the village in order to go to a big city like Hong Kong. And then it becomes this wider social lens on how so many Chinese migrants had to immigrate or immigrated to Hong Kong to look at the city in that particular time period in the early 2000s.
Yes.
Do you think about that when you find the kind of unique story that you're going into, does it later come the wider social lens, or do you feel like that's part of how you pick the film or the plot?
I think it's just start with the story or particular incidents, which I find sort of how touching or attractive. And then afterwards, it might have ramifications, but I don't start with an abstract idea. Usually the best.
I mean, I also think about Toje, A Simple Life, how I think that really resonated for so many Hong Kong viewers and audiences because everyone in Hong Kong grows up with a helper. And so it is a larger social issue, but it is so much that one story between the helper and the boy he took care of.
I wanted to do a film on that because at home we have a helper like that for about 15 years and I couldn't find the details. And then later, Roger, he wrote about 10 pages of his experience going into the old age home. And they are all particulars. For example, about the old man who I think misplaced his false teeth or took the wrong set of false teeth. And the moment you hear it, it's a very sort of wonderful detail which came from life, that kind of thing. Or the old man who got very restless, and then the moment he saw this music box, the moment he saw it and then he heard the music in the music box, he turned quiet. That kind of thing is, you can't invent those things. I always knew the story and the people I want to shoot, but then I don't have the details.
I also felt like the retirement home was so true to what life is. I mean, just watching it, I knew that it was a real retirement home. And I find that you do that a lot in your films where you try to use like Roger's original apartment, the retirement home, you try to use a real retirement home. Do you find that you've always done that? Or did you find at the beginning you tried to remake the set and then you thought, oh, in the end, why not just use the real thing?
I started in TV in the 70s. I mean, in 75, I shot TV for 4 years and we shot on real locations. Like we went to the real court of law, real police station. And I don't think any set can replace that. But when I got to features, people would say, "Oh, we can't go to these locations anymore because it was not like in RTHK, we can go anywhere." So I find very quite frustrated because it's not the same. They wanted to build sets for me, and I just resisted that. I don't know why. It's not, finding I should try to do this, but I just felt that a real place has not only got the look or the dimensions or the color, it's got a spirit.
Absolutely.
It's different.
And in particular, as you were talking about that, it made me think of The Secret, just because, yes, because you were talking about the spirit, but also when I watched The Secret, I think, was it 1979?
Yeah.
I watched it and I watched the backdrop, which is the stairs, very similar to Sekbangai, Pottinger Street, and kind of the different housing units that are on top of each other, which is very quintessential Hong Kong. And for me, just watching that, I felt a sense of deja vu just because I lived in Hong Kong. And even though I didn't go back to that street or exactly where that was, I think that sense of deja vu, that spiritual feeling, is sometimes related to you shooting in real sets.
Yes.
That's a really kind of interesting texture that you bring into the films as well. Something else that I think is really interesting that you do that's really real is somehow focusing on ordinary people and their relationships. So just thinking of A Simple Life, did you choose Deanie, Ip, and Andy Lau because they had that relationship? Because he's the real godson of Deanie Ip in real life? Or was it just coincidental?
No, I didn't choose their relationship first of all.
Right.
I cast Andy Lau because he's like the same age as Roger, but he's an unlikely cast. Now, with casting, I usually thought you ask an unknown actor who's very much acting at himself, or you ask a big star to do some acting. So we were considering who to ask, and there are lots of middle-aged good actors, like maybe Jackie Chan, others who can play Roger. But on consideration, maybe Andy Lau is the most unlikely and the biggest star. So we said, oh, let's try him, because once he gets into the production, we can command much more budget.
Yeah, that is a very practical consideration that all directors
And
have
I
to
thought
take.
he might like the challenge. And then, but although it's a risk for both of us, people might not believe in the character. People might still think he's a star, and it's usual too. So afterwards, we've tried to find someone to match him. So we thought, and Roger suggested maybe you should ask Deanie. Now, I'm not very familiar with Deanie, and I'm worried because I thought maybe she's also a star, and maybe she couldn't act old age, like she was around 60 there, and she has to act about 70, which is most difficult because you can be 60 and you can act 90. But if you act 70, it's too near your age, and at the same time, it's not the same. But she could do it. I mean, afterwards, she's proven to be a much better actress than I expected. And then, of course, her rapport with Andy is very obvious on screen too. But that is not the reason why we asked her to play the part.
You work with so many reoccurring actors in your films. So George Lamb, of course, and Andy Lau and others. Do you feel that that continuity helps the trust and the depth you're able to pull out of the actors when you direct?
But usually we work after a period of maybe at least 10 years. We don't work immediately in a few, collaborations. I don't really work that way because I got the script and then I try to find the actor. I don't have the actor work in mind to do a script. Although I was often asked to do it, like I say, can you write a script for my girlfriend? I mean, when lots of rich guys came and wanted to do their girlfriends a favor. And I rejected that because I didn't like the idea of working for a rich man,
Right.
which is bad, because come on, you can be flexible. I mean, it's difficult to find money,
I mean, practicality only goes so far.
Yeah, I mean, I thought there's so many things that I couldn't overcome.
You're interviewed a lot, and you often do film screenings of several films that you did many years ago, 20, 30 years ago. When you rewatch or rethink of the film, do you find it changes at all, or do you feel like the film is finished and it is what it is? You're done.
I seldom look at them, but when I really try to watch some of the old films, I find that usually at that time, why people like it at that time. There are very few films which has changed those which were not successful at that time. When I look at it, I still feel like Love in a Fallen City. I still feel that my interpretation was wrong. But
Mhm.
when I looked at Book and Sword, the Kung Fu movie, it was shown in 1987, and it was the only Kung Fu movie I made. And at the time, I was so involved and was so worried about the box office. I felt it was very bad. But there was a screening, I think, in 2018 in Germany, because there was a copy preserved in the theater. And they asked me to go there to present it. And it was 3 hours on the big screen on film. And after 40 years, almost, it was shot in 1986. It was very impressive. It was impressive because lots of the locations weren't there anymore. And because for one thing, we were shooting in the palace in Beijing. We were shooting in the palace in Manchuria. And we were shooting in Gobi Desert. And lots of these ancient temples. They're actually real locations.
Amazing.
Maybe they're not there anymore, not to say they're not allowed to shoot there. And also the costume and the lots of people, and then the Xinjiang. And it was like, even if it's a documentary, I mean, it was so colorful and so interesting, So I thought, oh, I haven't wasted 3 years of my life making that stupid movie.
And it's kind of like visiting old friends. Does it ever feel that way when you revisit the film?
No, not really. Sometimes when it was a bad film, I don't want to see them again.
Right. Yeah. I know so many of your films are really embedded in Hong Kong life and culture and city. So, do you find it quite interesting to look at or to hear from international audiences outside of Hong Kong?
Yes, I would, but I don't make it a routine or a habit to try to find out what people from other places in the world feel.
Do you find that their taste is very different or universally everyone likes a certain film? I was just thinking of the Germany example, right? Like they loved that film.
I don't know whether they loved it, but I think it got a better reception at that time than locally.
Right. Yeah.
Because like some films, they managed to penetrate geography, space and time. I never knew that the Japanese liked it. A Taiwan company invested in it. The Taiwanese people also, they felt that it was a moving story. And the Japanese, the mother was Japanese, so they found it sort of a good story. Hong Kong people also liked it. But I think for different reasons, and somehow it penetrated. But the longer it takes, the more people like it somehow. Because at that time it was, they thought, and people in Hong Kong were so much into genre films that either they were kung fu, and even Chua Lan, who died of recently, he was very experienced film producer. And when he heard I was shooting this movie, he said, "How could you manage to make someone invest in a film like that? I mean, it's difficult even for people to invest in a film, a love story, any kind of romance, or I mean, any film which is not kung fu. Not to say about mother and daughter," he said. You see, that was the climate in 89 when I shot the movie. Of course, it's different. Now everybody is shooting 伦理, I mean, family affairs or love story or social problems. But in 1989, the mainstream is still kung fu or comedy.
I think that again had that Chinese or Asia focus. I think it was also an issue with actors like Bruce Lee, who only were seen as kung fu actors, like Jackie Chan or Jet Li, maybe at that time.
At that time, actually, I have to work with Maggie because she is the actress whom the boss said, I want a film by Maggie Cheung. He wanted me to work on a movie with Lu Xiaofen, who was his girlfriend. I, re I resisted that. And I said, oh, I got a story about mother and daughter. I mean, I can ask Lu Xiaofen to play the mother because she looks a bit like my mom. And then he said, but you must ask Maggie Cheung to play the daughter. I said, oh my God, no way I can look like her. And then I convinced myself by thinking, oh, the audience doesn't know that it's your story, so it's okay. I mean, even if they knew it's your story, it's okay. Someone acted, But I felt sort of quite embarrassed to ask Maggie Cheung to play me, but I didn't choose her. I mean, I would have chosen someone who's different, that kind of thing. I just have to adapt to what the circumstances and the boss demands.
I read a really interesting story about Maggie Cheung, I think from like an interview with Wong Kar-wai, who said that when he first worked with her, people said that she wasn't a good actress, but then he watched her and he realized that she was just very nervous with scripts and reading, and so he took away the script and he said to her, just improvise, don't read a script anymore. And that made her more relaxed and then a better actress, and so that was how he shot the film. So I found that kind of interesting.
Oh, yes, because Maggie told me once that actually she was different since she worked not in The Mood for Love, but in Wong Kar-wai's first film. In Chinese, it's called Wong Gok Ka Mun, As Tears Go By.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And then what Maggie told me was that Wong Kar-wai asked her when she walked, she must swing her hips. She said, you must swing your hips like hell. Because she doesn't, and then the way she moved, was sort of kind of erotic.
Yeah.
So the relationship between her and Andy Lau becomes, very fiery
Yeah.
because of the way she moves. And then she got it. It's not only how you use your mind or understand or dialogue. It's the way you use your body.
Right.
Obviously, Wong Kar-wai is a very good director of actors.
My last couple of questions are kind of more in general about Chinese Canadians. How do you think about the relationship between Hong Kong and the wider Chinese diaspora? I'm thinking of how in Canada, there is such a large Hong Kong community. There's several different waves of Hong Kong people immigrating to Vancouver. Everything from 1967 to 1997 to 2014, and even to now during COVID, this current wave, very embedded, the connections between Hong Kong and Vancouver. Have you ever thought about that, or do you kind of think about that as we are now here?
I was thinking about the different immigrants to Canada or to the States, different waves of people, how they're different and what they're looking for is very different. How they react to things are also very different. Let's say my sister sort of emigrated to the States in 1968, and she's still in Modesto. And my brother is in Toronto. He was there when he was 15, and he's now 75.
Mm-hmm. He's only ever been in Toronto?
No, he was in Winnipeg to study high school.
Right.
And then he went to Toronto and he stayed there. And my sister went to Arkansas with my uncle. I didn't interview them. I ought to. But I have a feeling that at one stage, they got the best part of both worlds. It's like they got very good education, they live very steady life. In Hong Kong, actually, I mean, it's very difficult to be a high school student.
Absolutely.
Because very tough, no place to go. But if they were there when they were very young, and then they got good jobs, and then in the 60s or the 70s, especially my sister, she went back many times to China when China was still developing and poor, to visit shortly after the Cultural Revolution all over China as someone who is much better off, you know. And so she seems to be getting the best of both worlds. And now, what does she think? I don't know. Uh, I feel really people have to think, instead of what they can get from the society where they live, they have to think what they are giving to the society as well.
For sure.
I think all the time this kind of thought should be going side by side. Instead of thinking, oh, if I go to this place, I will get good job, blah, blah. But you don't think about how you can contribute to this place. I'm like that too. Because I thought, oh, I was thinking of maybe emigrating too at some time. I got a green card to America,
Right.
but I gave it up after 10 years. I got it in 1992. It's usual for Hong Kong people to want to go abroad to have a better life. And they're proud of it. I've been thinking about this, you know, I mean, since maybe a few years ago. And I thought everybody, in a way, gets his just desserts. It's like a lot of what you get is what you have contributed.
Usually, when you think about immigration, it is a moment of desperation,
Yeah.
right? You need to change your life circumstances. You need a better job. You need a better place for your family, your kids to go to school, or you yourself. And then you're in the new country. You need to find your job, get settled. So it's really, you're right, it's all about yourself. And then when all of that is settled, usually a lot later, 20, 30 years later, then you think about how you can contribute to society, right? Maybe you become a politician, a counselor, maybe you donate, but only after there's like a period of everything is calm, serenity, you're established.
When I came to really think about it, I find that maybe this trajectory is right. Because if you can't even support yourself, how can you help other people? You can't just sort of be very, very vocational and idealistic and not try to look after your finances, your health, and your personal relationships. If these don't get settled properly, you know, like your big enterprises, usually you just end up in tragedy.
Right.
The thinking should be, I mean, more kind of flexible. I never thought about how I could contribute to society, so to speak. I just landed on the job I was very interested in, and I just worked on it hard. And I never thought it was a way I could do something for society, but it ended up I did something. Like when people watch the films, it fosters their understanding and that kind of thing, entertainment, you know. So I feel the effort is necessary, but how you look at it is flexible.
And I also think that is the best way, that you do what you love and you never think that it will contribute to society, and then it does.
Like lots of people who think they work for society, they become hypocritical and bigoted.
Right, absolutely.
I heard so many of those people who were sort of thinking about great things, they usually end up not looking after themselves.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you so much.
For anyone that wants to dive into the world of some of the movie stars, singers that are featured in many of Anne's films, such as Andy Lau, Maggie Cheung, George Lam, please visit our feature exhibition, Dream Factory, Cantopop, Mandopop, 1980s to 2000. The exhibition is on until the end of May 2026. We have special curator tours a couple times a month in English, Cantonese, and Mandarin. This podcast was recorded on the traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. We invite you all to reflect on the territories that you're on and the host nations and pay respect to their elders, past, present, and emerging. To learn more about the Chinese Canadian Museum and book tickets, visit us at ChineseCanadianMuseum.ca and follow us on Instagram at ccmuseumbc for updates. The School Room is presented by the Chinese Canadian Museum, hosted by Dr. Melissa Carmen Lee and produced by Rosalie Gunawan. Production is supported by Noah Taylor. The theme music and original audio was created by Joshua Young, and graphic design is by Studio Pian Pian He and Max Harvey. Stay tuned for next month's episode of The School Room, available wherever you get your podcasts.